Okay, and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video. I am again privileged to be joined by Derek Lambert, the host of the awesome MythVision podcast, the channel on YouTube that is a real honeypot of intellectual sweetness and a real gold mine for digging into all sorts of ideas to do with religion and mythological thinking. It's just fantastic. And so I presented Derek Lambert to my audience for the first interview in this series, just understanding what his journey was from a sort of speaking in tongues, home church, very fundamental sort of Christian, through to Calvinism, which is where we got to at the end of the last video. And we're now going to have a look at how he went from Calvinism through to his present belief of atheism, and how he's become so interested and why he's become so interested in questioning all things religious. So welcome, Derek. Thanks for joining me again.
Thank you. Appreciate you interviewing me, my friend.
I appreciate all you've done to help me and my channel, and particularly with regard to the series we've been doing on the resurrection. I advise everyone check that out. It's an ongoing series, and we're up to, I think, video 7 at the moment, going on to 8 maybe, or 6 going on to 7, talking through that, and then we'll be doing the nativity at some point nearer Christmas. So that's advancing along. But for the purposes of this series, we talked about how you got to Calvinism. What was your journey away from Calvinism? What sowed the first seeds of doubt that Calvinism didn't quite work as a worldview you were hoping it would?
Well, I mean, just personally, I have to frame this in a way for people to understand I'm a little different than the usual person. So it's almost like 10 people at a bar, 9 of them drink responsibly. Then you have Joe over there who always gets into a fight, blacks out. We got to take care of him. Something's wrong with the guy. Now, is alcohol the problem? Well, maybe when it's mixed with Joe, but not with the 9 other people who know how to drink. For me, one could use that analogy for religion with me. I'm extreme. Now, it's not the same as like I do bad with it. I'm so into it. I'm taking it so seriously. Technically, I could be the kind of guy who Heaven's Gate would have taken cyanide and died. I was so into these things that I was so delusional. Most of your average Christians out here, especially in America where I'm at, they go to church on Sunday after going to the bar and the club on Saturday night. They live this life where and it's actually far more healthier, I guess you could say, is that they're able to live a normal, what everyone does on a normal life, and somehow say they're Christian and live and say, I accepted Jesus, and then go on cussing to the moon, to the cows fly, and, like just act like everything's okay, whatever. I didn't. The end was near. The apocalypse was coming. My family needed to be saved. There's people who weren't believing, and I obsessed over it. So,
which goes to some way to explain where you are at the moment with atheism, which is obsessed around and I'd say in a good way, because it's fascinating what you do, and I'm with you on your obsession completely. But there is definitely a parallel between how I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. A parallel between where you were with your Christianity and where you are with your atheistic worldview. Would you say that's fair?
I think anything I do is like that, because I am who I am.
Yeah.
There are certain things, though, that you can do that are healthy, that are good. And dwelling on God coming back any day to destroy the wicked isn't good. I'm going to tell you straight up. It's not a good thing, especially when you hope it happens to the people who have denied your gospel you're trying to give to them.
So there's a vengeful aspect to that. Interesting.
There's kind of an upset. Why aren't they accepting my stuff? And half the time I'd go, well, God, that's right. You kept their eyes closed. As a Calvinist, you're the one who's going to have to open their heart. So for whatever reason, you have your reasons why you're not saving them. So they're beyond my reasons. I tried to accept this crazy idea of God. That's not what got me away from Calvinism, though. I wanted to say all of that, though, to say when I had struggles with addiction and then be so deep into the religion, I got confused about me. I wondered if I was God's chosen. I would go.
Yeah,
You
so
know what I
that's
mean?
interesting. So how did you marry up? Because this is the one question I was going to ask you, which is how did you marry up the fact that you were addicted to substances of varying type, I presume, and God, and being an evangelical Christian of sorts. How
Yeah.
did you marry those two?
Yeah, you have to justify it in your head by saying, well, look at King David. He sinned. He had shortcomings, yet he was a man after God's own heart, which is the typical
Right.
Christian view. That's not knowing that like one of them is whitewashing David to look good and he's really a horrible individual, probably historically, all of that kind of stuff like that. That's whitewash if he existed, all that.
Yeah,
That's like,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
not
yeah.
even on the radar, right?
There's
Like this,
layers and layers. Yeah.
this is the Christian bubble. David literally killed a man who was married to the woman he ends up marrying, all of this. And I justify these things and go, maybe my shortcomings are because, I'm like a David or something. I would try to justify.
Which is justifiable. I mean, it's nothing to say that you can't. If it was to be charitable to Christianity, it's nothing to say you can't be like a sinful individual. Do you know? And I use that word; it's a highly problematic word, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the eyes of God, a sinful individual, an individual with problems, and not be someone hankering after a good life in a Christian sense. So yeah, those two things aren't mutually exclusive. So yeah,
The problem is it got dark. It got
right.
real dark. It wasn't like, I don't know, maybe if there was a David and he did what he did, maybe it was dark for him too. I don't know, but it got so dark. I couldn't understand how I was filled with the Spirit. I had God's Spirit in me, and yet I was stuck sitting here injecting heroin in my veins. And like I'm sitting here injecting heroin in my veins, thinking like, how do I steal the next item to get more drugs because I have no money? Like this is like, how does God allow me to go that far where I don't know how to get out of it? I feel like there's no way out. I'm stuck. And so that in me, I could still rationalize. Even when I got clean off the drugs, I could still find a way to go, okay, you know what? But all of that gave me, it chipped the armor of confidence and absolute ego where I was right. See, it wasn't that couldn't be explained away. I could have got clean, could have possibly stayed clean, and made all these rational excuses for why God is real and this saved me, and I could have gave credit to Jesus today for what? For why I'm clean. I don't give credit to Jesus why I'm 6 years clean today, though.
I was going to come on to this. Did religion play a part in you getting clean?
No.
Or God, or
a
but as far as
concept
you saw it.
initially. So God became something bigger. This is where the exit starts.
Right.
So
Okay.
this is multiple things happening for me at once. Number one, I have this concept of the Bible. By this time, I'm convinced that Calvinism makes far better sense of a lot of the data. Doesn't mean it's all through and through. I thought it was all through and through. So you can bend words to mean something. And he's not only the propitiation for us, but the propitiation for the whole world. Oh, whole world of believers. Don't you know? Like, because over here it says if you don't believe, you're condemned. Well, he's obviously not the propitiation for them, or else his blood was spilled, vainly, and it didn't, all these things. So you start to rationalize. Well, what happened was, as a Calvinist, I got into eschatology. That is the study of last things for those who don't know, who might be paying attention, meaning the end times. I was a big fanatic about that. I had dreams. I thought the end was going to happen in my lifetime. And I would literally have nightmares where fire would cover the heavens and come down and melt. And then I'd close my eyes and say, Jesus. And then I'd end up in this other place. And there's this guy with a feathered pen. This is a real dream I had. And he says, Derek, everything's going to be okay now. And he's writing in a big book. And I'm like, that's the book of life. That's the book, but the name should have already been written. I don't know why he's writing in it. Anyway, but the point is I had these
minor details.
Minor. I'm giving people a lot of little something to see that this is real. Well, I look in eschatology because the pastor I'm talking to named Andy Webb at the Presbyterian PCA, they're a very conservative version of Presbyterianism. They're more like an offshoot of Puritanism. And he was like, look, you should look into eschatology here. Here's a case for amillennialism by Kim. I can't remember the name. But anyway, I became an amillennialist because words weren't literal. This is where the start for me as a fundamentalist really, really begins to get me. And this is good. I'm glad I read this book. it was God is the God of a cattle on 1,000 hills was one of the phrases in the book that convinced me. And it was, well, is God the God of a cattle on 1,001 hills? And I was like, yeah, he's the God of all hills, all cattle. So, and it was like, yeah, that's the point. But the Bible says of 1,000 hills. So you take that 1,000 to be literal, or are you taking that 1,000 to be kind of a metaphor for everything? He's God. And I'm like, good point. Even better. Because the point is, it's more than 1,000. It's everything. That's what I started to do as a Christian. Well, then words can mean, like, you have to interpret them. They have to mean things that you can now interpret that may not be face value flat. Here's your understanding. And it says what it says. And there you go. So I'm looking in eschatology and realizing there's some serious interpretation necessary to try and get to the bottom of any of this. And are we right in that interpretation? Well, I found out about partial preterism. Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar, R.C. Sproul. These are like famous.
Could you explain preterism?
So preterism is simply the teaching that prophecies that were predicted happened already. In fact, in the scholarly world, we call those, if they weren't, well, most of the time they don't think they were literally fulfilled prophecies, so they call it ex eventu. So if something of an event was claimed to have been predicted, let's take Daniel, the book of Daniel. It acts like it's taking place in the 6th century BC or 600s BC, 7th century. Anyway, Babylonia. So here, Daniel has these predictions, and a lot of them seemingly come to pass. Now, is the author writing these much later and acting like these things happened? Well, most scholars say yes.
Yeah.
So those would have been, as a Christian, I would have said, no, this is written back in Babylon, and these were fulfilled. And then there's some stuff that's still pointing in the future to yet be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Preterism is these are fulfilled. Now, partial preterism says there's still parts of prophecy that haven't been fulfilled. I became a partial preterist because as an amillennialist, and then before that was a premillennialist, which the rapture, and it's like typically the most common version of it is the Left Behind type stuff. I became someone who realized, hold on, Matthew chapter 24, Luke chapter 21, Mark 13, they're all depicting the temple of Jerusalem. I couldn't get my head around this being a future thing. I just couldn't see it. He says this generation. So that started to convince me partial preterism was true, while keeping the amillennialist words can kind of mean things that you wouldn't expect, or they could go beyond the meaning. Yeah.
This generation being a great example, of course, that one's fought over, ad infinitum, where Christians are like, well, of course, it hasn't happened yet. Whereas a preterist would say it has happened, and would they say, but it refers to, specifically the fall of Jerusalem, or
yes. So the synoptic apocalypse became clear to me. What really got me though, life. I'm a partial preterist for a few years. I'm Calvinist. I'm doing my thing, and then toward the end, I'm listening to a YouTube video by a guy named Don Preston. He's a full preterist, Church of Christ member. I know I shouldn't have been listening to a Church of Christ member as a Calvinist, right? But he said in his video, which really blew my mind, Jesus already came back. I'm like, bro, this guy's smoking drugs. Like this guy's got to be on something. But it was so enticing to hear him say it that I clicked the next video. I start listening to the scripture references he brings up. And it was this is called full preterism. This means everything prophetic, or this brand of it, because there's so many different offshoots of this, everything prophetic has already been fulfilled. All prophecy has been fulfilled. That's pretty much full preterism for some versions, the version I got into. In that version, though, when he said that Jesus came back, I looked at the scriptures in the New Testament and saw that what he said was the logical conclusion of what should have happened. So I'll give you an example. In Revelation, 1st chapter, it opens with saying, write all the things down, I tell you, which things that must soon take place. Mellow. Soon. This has got to happen soon. And then he's like, make sure you write it down. This has got to happen. It's going to happen very soon. And then at the end of the book, the last chapter, And the angel said, and these things, do not seal up the words of the prophecy in this book, for the time is at hand. For these things must soon take place. Now, when was this written? Well, as a full preterist, you convince yourself that Revelation's written before 70 AD because you make it all about the temple. Why? Because Matthew, Mark, and Luke are all three synoptic apocalypses speaking about the temple. So everything becomes second coming of Jesus becomes the temple. Jesus came, and we even used Josephus to try and back this up. Josephus saw armies in the clouds. Jesus said, some of you standing here will not taste death till you see the glory of the Son of Man coming with his angels to repay each man according to their deeds. This was the coming. He brought his army in the clouds. Behold, he cometh on the clouds, Revelation 1:7 says. So we would do this, and I became a full preterist.
So the difference between the skeptic and the full preterist here, obviously belief in God, but the full preterist would say the synoptics were written before 70, whereas the skeptics would say they were written ex eventu after 70, referring back to something that's already happened. And then when they were making prophecies about Jesus returning, to the second coming, then those were then corrected by further gospels until John sort of, corrects that out of, you get this idea that, as many would now say, Jesus was a failed apocalyptic prophet. That was the reality. And so each time the gospels are further on, they're writing about Jesus, and the end times happening in this generation. Of course, it didn't happen. And so therefore the next gospel has to kind of in some way explain that away and change the language or change the agenda. So that's anyway.
It's so with us as full preterists, we believed that happened, right? We know 70 AD happened.
Yeah.
And so we had to explain when it says Jesus would come and judge the world, right? The judgment of God, the final judgment, that was 70 AD. The end of the ages was upon them. And it was upon them, not us. So we divorced ourselves more from the Bible, which was a good thing, because you start to go, that's not about me. That was about the Israelites in the first century, the Jews. That wasn't about me. That was about that temple. There's not going to be this cataclysmic fire come down from heaven to destroy us today. People are waiting for the doomsday event to happen now. That happened then. So we started.
Which makes it rather parochial, though, because it makes it all about, it's just not particularly relevant to the modern reader.
Right.
Just a random.
Yeah. So as preterists, a lot of these guys believe it, right? So they say, well, how did he come? If he came, how did he come? Did he literally come on clouds? Did he literally appear? Well, no. They go, well, he's like Yahweh in the Old Testament. God came on the clouds many times, according to the Old Testament, in the language in Psalms. And he came to judge the Babylonians, and he came to judge these people and those people. That it was just that kind of language. Now language means what you want it to mean, because now this gets into the moon and the sun and the stars will not show their light, and the moon will be like blood, and all of these things become what they called apocalyptic language, which is simply language of saying something bad's going to happen. It's like omens and stuff.
It's figurative language. I mean, what you've done is you've discovered figurative language, really, symbolism and allegory, and the way that we write in everyday fiction, and how we use metaphor and how we use simile and other types of figurative language. So I mean, I suppose when you look at the hardcore biblical literalists, they accept symbolism, or they accept such figurative language far, far less.
Yeah.
And until there's a point where they can't. So, for example, 1,000 hills type thing is like, well, you have to accept that's representative. And there are certain things where there's no other way of saying that. But otherwise, the threshold from symbolism to literalism is much lower for the fundamental evangelical. But then what you're saying is, in accepting preterism, you had to accept figurative language far more overtly. Is that right?
You have to. You can't, because Jesus said. You see where it comes back to Jesus said. Jesus said he would come back. Jesus said it was going to happen soon. Jesus even said some of the disciples standing there would not die.
Yeah.
Okay, so that had to happen because Jesus couldn't lie.
Yeah.
We already believe in Jesus to start with. There's no critical thinking here. This is just how do we figure out Jesus, because we have to believe that.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, you logically draw this conclusion that it had to happen. And then you end up believing that. Well, I ended up getting excommunicated from my church. I'm kind of fast forwarding here because at first I got in trouble. 5 elders brought me into church. They wanted to correct me. They did not want to debate with me. They did not want to discuss this matter with me. They were telling me, shut up, because I was talking to other members in the church about this doctrine, trying to convince them that this seems to make the most sense. And one of them was being convinced, but I think he was going through so much tough times in life. At the same time, he's dependent on the church. So he probably went with whatever the church had to tell him. And me and him kind of split hairs in terms of ways we went. I left and stopped going to church because I felt like I wasn't at home. I got excommunicated. So they excommunicated me, made me not feel at home, and then excommunicated me. And then they're like, they saw a video where I did a sermon, a speech in New York on this. I was up there giving a lecture at a church about full preterism and how it changed my life. In it, I said I was excommunicated because of full preterism. The pastor literally emails me, writes me, says, that's a lie. You're lying against us, the whole nine. You weren't excommunicated for that. You were excommunicated because of absence from coming to church. Do you know why I stopped coming to church, man? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is they get rid of me and I'm not controlled by any bubble of thinking or orthodoxy, if that makes sense. And then therefore I could go and venture. Well, I must admit, you're going to laugh a little, but I watched a video called Zeitgeist, not the whole addendum of stuff that goes on and the 9/11 conspiracy stuff. I'm talking about the idea that Jesus was like other gods. That was what I took away from the whole thing. I didn't know the nook and cranny of Osiris and Horus and Dionysus and all these copycat things. And they go a little way too far in terms of if you're going to be factual. But it was enough for me as a layperson to put Jesus from this high, it's the peak pinnacle of all truth, and it flattened him out on the same level of other gods in this video, even if it wasn't completely true.
So let's understand this psychologically. So you were in a situation where you had been effectively ejected from a church
for following what I believe was the truth about the Bible.
Yeah. So you're going to be feeling, pretty not vulnerable, but pretty annoyed with certain echelons of church structures and different church scenarios. For following what you would argue is the evidence, honestly. So then, therefore, you've been attacked for misrepresenting how you think it was by that church. So then you see this Zeitgeist movie that then is sowing some seeds in your psyche, right? Yeah. Would that be right? So a bit like the some seeds fall on fertile ground, some fall in the cracks of whatever, as a parable goes. Here you are now, like, ironically, you are providing fertile ground for a couple of seeds of doubts. More generally, not just theologically about certain aspects of a particular theology, but in terms of actually who Jesus was. Is it, would that be correct?
100%. And there's a lot going on, and the timeline of what happened exactly might be a little butchered here, but this is what happens. I'm struggling with addiction again in this vein of this area of time within a year or so. I have those seeds of doubt that were planted in terms of, like, am I right about what I believe? Is this true? And you automatically go back to that being true because it's very deeply embedded in you. But I have those seeds of doubt. At the same time, I'm dying of addiction. And I'm realizing, and this might have been before I was so bad off on the drugs. I'm realizing that, first of all, Jesus may not be the truth. There may be other gods. Like, this is the thing that started to get into my head. And maybe I don't understand what I'm reading because there might be allegory. Who knows? I started finding out from a buddy of mine named Mark. I can't give his last name. If his mother knew, he's afraid she might die. She's of old age. And if she knew that he was an atheist, she would probably croak over and die. But he started talking to me about this thing called astrotheology and how there might be meaning these stories don't literally have truth. They're not literally true. Oftentimes they might be interpreted as the sun, moon, and the stars, or some type of astrology, like the story of Samson. Samson, the name means sun. He has 7 locks. There's 7 days in a week. When you cut off the locks, you cut the days of the week off, the sunlight, you have darkness, because after his hair gets cut off, his strength is gone, and then they gouge his eyes out. So now he can't even see. This might be the winter solstice. Now,
I fully think that Samson, I think we mentioned this last time maybe, or I mentioned it to someone else, but I think Samson is a solar myth for sure, because when you look at it in the context of the Bible, it doesn't really tell you anything. There's no great bit of theological learning that you get out of the Samson story. It's a little bit confusing until you understand it as a solar myth, and you're like, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. Exactly. Literally, the whole story now makes sense. I get it as a figurative, as a symbolic interpretation of that epic battle between sun and the moon, where Delilah represents the moon, and then you can talk about the seasons, and anyway.
I mean, it down to the nook and the cranny. I mean, like when he goes to give his riddle and have people guess, it was 30 pairs of underwear he was willing to give, or garments, whatever. 30, there's 30 days in a month, and then there's 30 men he goes and kills once his wife, that they ended up burning alive, by the way, gave away the riddle and told the truth to the people. So there's like the number 30, which is the monthly thing. Delilah seems to symbolize the moon, the battle between the sun and the moon. She cuts his hair off. She also gets paid in silver rather than gold, which the color of the moon. Like, there's a lot of possibilities. And one might be watching this who's a Christian going, yeah, possibility. You see, Derek, you weren't following the truth. No, trust me. This is what I was finding from other people that were academics I started listening to. Once a story like that can be gleaned as that kind of interpretation, what am I dealing with? This is what started happening. I started going, I mean, it was a more beautiful way to approach the Bible too, to me, because I was like, hold on, like, this might have ancient astrological significance. And what if the whole Bible was that way, right? Even the New Testament, which meant I got into, there were certain pastors back in the 1600s called, I can't remember the guy's name, but he wrote a book called The Devil's Pulpit. He thought the whole New Testament was astrology, that Jesus was his son and his disciples were the 12 months or zodiac signs and all the whole 9, dude. Once you have done this, you have like escaped any literalism and any necessity to must have this book in my mind, because I went from literal to this may not mean what we think it means at all.
I find this kind of journey fascinating because, and I spoke to Josh Bowen about his deconversion. His deconversion was fascinating because he took up Assyriology after learning sort of languages and other kind of aspects of biblical exegesis and what have you. Being a very committed Christian, then went to study a PhD in Assyriology, and that's where you're understanding the ancient Near East culturally and anthropologically, and understand the whole milieu in which the Hebrew Bible is set. And then he finds that the Hebrew Bible is drawing from all of these cultures and all of these other texts and all these other sources incredibly obviously. And he's like, I lost my faith in 48 hours, basically. It's just like, that was the rug that was just pulled out from under him that led to that very quick deconversion. Now, to go back to you, I find it interesting because you're presenting this situation where you're going quite slowly, Calvinism through to full preterism, and then suddenly the kind of zeitgeist moment where it all just unravels really quickly. There's this kind of gradual change to then a sudden. Is that right? Did you suddenly find a deep dive into skepticism?
Well, it was more of esoteric. So I went from a literalist Christian, full preterist, to, oh my gosh, what if this is allegory for the sun, moon, and stars? And when you're a fundamentalist, you kind of do that with everything. If something says something here, you almost go, where else in the Bible is that? So you think maybe the whole Bible is. Jonah appeared to be a astrology type myth. There seems to be constellations of a giant fish in the sky in ancient world. So like, there's this giant fish. Is it swallowing? Is this a literal story of an actual fish on Earth that's swallowing someone? Hard to tell, because Argonaut, the ark, is another astrology that was told in ancient myths that played its role in the heavens. And there's this giant fish who swallows a man who's on a ship. Like, this seemed to start to indicate that astrology plays more role in the Bible than I know. And then what that did, that blew up my thinking. It actually told me we have no clue what we're reading. This is what I was thinking. All of us Christians, we are so behind. We have made it what we want it to be. We have this narrative that we've painted, and we think of it this way. We don't even know these Hebrew Bible scriptures. Like, we don't have a clue what we're reading, and it might mean something symbolic, which blew my mind, and it made me go, I need to dig deeper.
Yeah, so I'm writing, which is kind of a long-term project that's going on, because I'm co-writing it with someone else in Canada. But I'm writing the third part to this, which is the Exodus, a critical examination of the Moses story. And in that, it's really interesting how everything, fits into this idea of, illusion and intertextuality and deferring to all these other ideas. What was your point? I've just had an MS moment. What did you just say?
My point was it's all becoming not literal. It's starting to tell me that they're myth making. They're writing things. They're writing stories.
Oh, that was it. Yeah. So the whole point. So in writing, sorry, it's a real multiple sclerosis brain moment. But in writing in the Hebrew Bible, in reading the Hebrew Bible as a modern reader, we are not the audience. We are not the designed audience as far as the writers are concerned. And as a result, we don't get, I don't know what percentage of the meaning that we should get. But we are not ancient Near Eastern Canaanites or Hebrews, or in the New Testament, Jews. We are not those people. And so therefore, so many of the things that are being talked about and being referenced in a kind of intertextual sense, so many allusions are we just miss them and we don't get them. And then we just start making up things to make sense of that.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So we end up projecting our modern understanding of how we think things were and how we think things are, and we project that onto our interpretation, onto the Bible, and create our own interpretation. But we are not the intended audience for those books, and so we're just screwing up that interpretation almost, necessarily.
I'm slowly showing everybody that I had a strong grip on the Bible. I mean, a very strong grip, no matter what. This is true. Even as I started finding out that it's allegory, I still believed in it. I still believed it held truth, and it was maybe this is the way that God was trying to present. Like, there was still that cognitive bias going on in a way where this is the truth. And yet when I found out things like, okay, well, I thought the whole New Testament even understood all this stuff as well. When I started finding out that they had reinterpreted things, my grip started to loosen. I started to kind of let go of it slowly over time. It was gradual. I thought at first, maybe this is literally true historically and allegorical, symbolic of something else. That was how God may have revealed this truth or whatever, right? Man, I was in for a rude awakening as I started to dig.
So you went on like this kind of slow and then a big deep down, quick dive into a more esoteric understanding of the Bible, where it still holds some kind of theological truth,
right? And
then there's another kind of dip that's due to, or that no, you're saying then leaving that was quite gradual as your grip loosened, or even on that esoteric, understanding of the Bible, that then was slowly released.
I guess the best I could do is give it right here, right? So I'm Calvinist. I'm full preterist. I'm starting to go. I'm esoteric. I dip. You're right. I dip. I'm esoteric. And while I'm down here in the esoterics is when I actually started to be willing to say, are there things wrong? Is there things that aren't true? Because while I was on this dip, it wasn't Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the life. That was up here. Even in full preterism, Jesus is the only way. Once I dipped down into esoterics and comparative religions and said, okay, all these ancient religions have these gods as well that have interesting claims about them and stories, and some of them ascend on high, and some of them are killed by their brother. Like Osiris really intrigued me. These things really got my attention. And I went, oh my gosh, Christians who kept trying to say, no, these were all written after Christianity. What? No, I started finding out that's not true.
Yeah.
That's what really hurt that's what got me. And I was like, okay, hold on. That truth started to disappear. And I started to look, are there problems?
Did you also find that there were problems with, like you said there, where some Christians were telling you, oh, these were written, after, when you then found out that they were truly written? Did you find that you started doubting a lot of fellow Christians for kind of lying and misinterpreting stuff willfully?
Yeah, I didn't understand.
I
didn't understand why they were saying it. And then, I mean, I did in a way because I realized they were going to lose their faith. But I also was thinking to myself, like, really? Like, let's just be honest. And what really intrigued me was these little things like Justin Martyr talking about, we believe just like you do about Apollo and about, that's our belief in Jesus. And he came before, and these gods came before. God was revealing these things. One of the church fathers was saying Satan, tricked everybody. I mean, when you have a church father who's saying that these myths come before and Jesus looks like them, that was pretty clear to me. I was like, okay, hold on. Even the church, there's some honesty here, even though the explanation's ridiculous. And by then, Satan wasn't literally true for me. Satan then at that point started to also play into, what does Satan mean? Is Satan a real being? Is this an allegory? Like, I'm already willing to reinterpret what it means. This is why I think Christians have to keep a strong grip on interpretation. They have to. Because if you don't, guys like me are going to discover
it's unraveling. Yeah, because it is such a case of, and you can talk about it in any different area. Like for some people, for you, your thread that started unraveling it was slightly different from maybe another Christian who it might be something to do with something Jesus said, or someone else might be the Old Testament, or someone else might be this. But as soon as that thread, whatever that first thread might be, starts getting pulled and pulled and pulled, it necessarily starts unraveling the whole fabric of the worldview. And so you're right, the Christian has to be on it to just keep that all in. Otherwise, they're justifying every bit of unraveling. And this is what the liberal Christian has to do, which I'd say, bring on the liberal Christians. I think they're much better Christians, but like I've said with you before, the Westboro Baptist Church is almost more logically consistent,
right?
Because they're saying, right, we can't let any of that. It's all one. It's all true. This is it. I'm keeping a firm grip on everything. It's all true. You start letting it unravel, and you are trying to justify and fight fires here and solve that problem there and solve this problem there. It becomes a right cognitive nightmare. So
yeah, and Dr. Josh's whole point of the ancient Near East being borrowed from, I did not know it nearly on the level that he did. But when I found out Moses may not have existed, I was really into the Acharya S stuff, D.M. Murdoch, for those who don't know. At that time, you could tell because the astrotheology and all these things, whether she was completely right or not, she was right enough. They say a broken clock's right twice a day. Well, she was right more than twice a day. And on the things that she was hitting on really caught my attention. Moses' story, it being put into a basket, and like finding out that might be Sargon, or at least came from a narrative of a previous individual, that blew my mind. For me, I was looking at the Christians who would hear this and watch them stay stuck and deny it, or try to go, well, it's true for Moses too. That happened for Moses. I just kept on seeing with the Christians, they gave me more reasons to push me over the edge. In fact, they helped me leave Christianity. They helped me get out of this worldview more by watching them react and act and say the things they did, make me more and more go, they're not in it for truth. They're in it for comfort. It is not about
fascinating. So seeing how they dealt cognitively, seeing how the cognitive dissonance reduction like manifested in other Christians as they were dealing with what you'd already dealt with, but you were still kind of in there, but you could see them react in a certain way, made you understand the whole sort of scenario even better? That's fascinating. I mean, I've written literally chapters on in my Exodus book on the Sargon accounts and how they underwrite the Moses account. So I could go off on a right side.
Oh, we're going to get into that.
I find that fascinating, but just, I mean, it's interesting how you saw that. How could the probability is astronomical that you're going to get two like children, infants being like, you know, rejected by their mother in some way for some reason, put into a pitch-covered basket, shoved down a river. It's going to be picked up by someone else. They're going to be like then looked after by that person and become a ruler. It's like, what are the chances of that happening? And why would anyone put a pitch basket and an infant in a crocodile-infested like waters? It's like, come on.
Well,
it's obvious.
It goes even deeper than that, right? Because you and me both know that alone will red flag. The problem is, I already knew about the Adam and Eve motifs coming from Mesopotamia. And you had this snake, you got this garden, you have this fruit or this plant that'll give you rejuvenation and long lasting life. All of in a garden, you know. And then here you have this myth, the rib. I mean, dude, and it goes on and on. The dust. I mean, made from dust. Like when you did all that, then you look at Sargon, then you look at Samson, and you see this super strong hero. And then you see Hercules, for example, just to give you an example, right? And you go, well, the Christians kept going, it's not perfectly Xerox. This is not an actual copy. They're totally different stories. This, that, no influence. But in my head, I started going, I mean, every single armor that I had on to keep me from going was chipped away. I just kept on going. Then I looked at Jesus. Once I knew Jonah looked mythology, I said, hold on, just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights, so shall the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth. Jesus is rifing off of Jonah.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, that's a myth. What is Jesus a myth? So this was the perfect catalyst to become a mythicist for me at the time.
Because this is a question I've been asking heaps recently, which is, what is the New Testament? What is religious belief? What is Christian belief without the Old Testament? So if you took away the Hebrew Bible and say, look, as you said, you know, Moses myth, Jonah, blah, 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 all these are clearly mythological, the creation story, the global flood, all that kind of stuff never happened, it's myth, blah, blah, blah. If I'm still a Christian and I admit that, because I actually know some Christians who will broadly reject the Old Testament. But then I say, well, how are you justified in believing the New Testament? How are you justified? Where does that leave you with Jesus? How can you, you know, if Jesus is coming down to fulfill every jot and tittle of the law, but you're saying Moses didn't exist, so there is no Mosaic law, and you know, what is Jesus? How can you justify and maintain your Christian faith, given that you've accepted that the Hebrew Bible upon which it is based is broadly mythological? Anyway.
No, it's a great question. I ask them all the time. I have a friend, Ian Mills. He's now a PhD, Dr. Mills, and from Duke University. And he flat out said in an interview with me that the apocalypse was predicted by Jesus and it did not happen. And I'm thinking to myself, stop the recording. I click, hey man, off record. If you don't mind me asking, I hate to be personal, but I really want to ask you. I couldn't help but have to ask this question. Why then are you a Christian? Like, why? You just told me he fell. God in the flesh just freaking fell, bro. And you're a Christian. Well, why? And he goes, because I like Christianity. I can't argue with him on that. I'm not even that. Yeah. His answer was so beautiful that I was like, you know what, man? I love you, man. I love you. I get it. I'm not going to knock you. But if he ontologically like went on to argue for it and defend it and try to make this true, which he doesn't do that, then I would say this makes no sense. No sense at all.
It's quite similar. Is it Christian Thinker? Who's the guy that you have sometimes on your British guy who is agnostic? He's an agnostic Christian. That guy that I was on with him, one of the panel on that you had on, and he was broadly saying the similar sort of stuff. Which is like, how do you then? And we were talking to him about how do you define your Christianity then? How can you still say you're a Christian? Anyway, if you can't remember.
Yeah. I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Ethan, I think it was.
Yes, yeah. So it's that same sort of thing, which is like you end up picking and choosing like the stuff that you like out of this. It's almost like you got this smorgasbord of a menu of like ideas within Christianity or within whatever religion. You're like, I'll have that one, I'll have number 22, I'll have number 33, I'll have 54, I'll have that one, I'll have that one, and that one, and then that's what's making my Christianity or my belief system. You're like, man, you can't pick and choose like that. That's not how it works. Well, it obviously is for some people.
This is where it goes, right? So I get into the esoterics, I get into mythology, I get into recognizing the text may not mean what I thought it meant. I really need to do some digging and compare it possibly. Are there other stories that this is riffing off of? And you need to look at scholarship. So I started to investigate, and that's what led me down that path. What happened was I still had a God. I still had a higher power. Mind you, I am trying to get clean off drugs.
Yeah, so I was going to say, how does your addiction fit into this journey right now?
So and it's hard to know if some of the things I told you when they happened, I couldn't tell you exactly, because when you're on drugs and you're struggling and you're nodding out because of heroin and fentanyl, you're like, okay, you probably not have the best memory of those times and knowing exactly when was what. About a year I was on heroin really bad, injecting, and when I'd run out, I'd withdraw, I'd go to the worst withdrawals, I'd get back on. I kept trying to quit. I tried over-the-counter medications. I tried doing different things. I did at one point tried Suboxone. For those who don't know, it's buprenorphine, and it's used to try and help drug addicts who are addicted to these type of things to get off. It's a maintenance drug that'll help you maintain and know how to live life, yet at the same time not have to do drugs. I've done that, and that was successful for a while, but I quit doing that. That's many years before this. This last go-around, I'm going to spare you all the details of the horrific stuff. I made up lies to my mom to try and get more drugs, about drug dealers coming by and shooting up my house, my children in it, the whole nine. I was coming up with some crazy shit, trying to get drugs. That's how fiendish I was. You can't describe it. It's like a starving person and there's food, and they know that they can get, if they steal it, they'll eat. It's like that. That's how it was every time. So my mom convinced me to go to this lady's house and get clean. Well, I go, and I had plans of not staying. I just wanted to get everyone off my back. The Department of Social Services is looking into my household, looking into possibly taking my children from me. My truck got repossessed, so I don't have a truck now. My wife kicked me out of my house, and I'm living from couch to couch at the end. I'm going through serious life right now. I'm literally at the bottom I've ever been at. I've never been lower. So I'm about to lose it all, and my health is declining. I am not doing real well. I have no money, no job, no nothing. I have a felony charge on my record, which is why I had to go to probation. They were going to piss test me or send me to jail, but I've been avoiding my PO. So I have all of these legal problems. I've got all this real life problems. And here I am withdrawing. And I said this little prayer, right? I remember saying this prayer. And it was like the universe lined up to me. Like, it was just like, this is the perfect timing. So I started to attribute this to a higher power. And I prayed. I was like, I can't do it, but you can. Well, I get clean, and I end up going to meetings, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, 12.
So this woman that your mum made you go and visit, she helped get you on this then?
She was in recovery. So I ended up going over there, and she at least got me off for 4 days. And I was so in pain, and in like the worst pain I ever experienced. I went into what they call, when you take Suboxone too early, it pushes you into a withdrawal. It's an acute withdrawal, but it's literally like the worst form of it, because it's all withdrawal happening at once. And all night long, I was moaning and groaning and crying and crawling into the bathtub for like 12 baths that whole night. I'd be freezing, and then I'd be hot, and I'd be freezing, and I'd be hot. Well, for weeks, I started to document this on my other channel. Derek Lambert is the name of the YouTube channel. You could see my progress all the way up till 6 years, here I am now. Well, at the beginning, I had a God belief. And as I went to the meetings, I was praying. I was, all a part of God. And at some point with this, my God was just a energy, a force, a being. It wasn't Jesus.
And was this reinforced by the meetings? You know, you hear about the 12-step thing, which is an American thing, but it's broadly religious. In a sense. Was that what your experience was?
Absolutely. to them, you had to have a God of your own understanding, whatever that might be. It doesn't matter. So the last time I went to go get my 6-year chip, I went in and pretty much told them, well, my God, I did just once in a while, I pay, I go in and I show tribute for where helped me get clean, even though I'm an atheist. I said, well, good. God to me is you group of drunks. And I said, GOD, group of drunks. I said, that's God. And then I also said that it's good, orderly direction. God is just doing the next right thing. That was how I started to define God when I was in their setting. Of course, I don't believe in a God, but it helped them. And they, like, people walking up to me after, that was the most amazing speech. It was so, and I'm thinking to myself, it's almost like the pastor, Dan Barker, after preaching when he no longer believes, and everyone was, I felt the Holy Spirit from that. That was so powerful. And he's like, dude, now I know. And this was what solidified his disbelief, was like, I don't even believe in the words I'm saying, and they're filling the Holy Spirit. It's like, it's obvious that this is human. But anyway, I look back as I was studying early on this whole mythology thing. And now that I'm clean, I'm able to focus on things other than drugs. So now I'm actually researching and studying and listening to hours and hours and hours while working at this construction company. I'm skipping a little bit of time here to get to the point. I'm now working at a construction company, which I traveled for work. I became a supervisor. I moved up the ranks really quick because that's just, I aspire to things I'm really good at, and I go, and people see that and they're like, okay, here, you're getting a raise. We're giving you responsibility. You have a truck. So I started to supervise, and I'm spending hours every day at a hotel room. I have no children around because I'm traveling. I'm paying bills, but I'm all alone in a hotel room watching YouTube videos, endless hours of lectures and YouTube videos. And I would do it for 3-4 hours after work every day and go to sleep and wake up, go to work. And during the day, I had Bluetooths in while I command everybody to do things, listen to audiobooks, listen to things for the next 3 years while I was working in this company. It wasn't the whole 3 years. Toward the end, I realized this. It was really early on. I looked back and said, those footprints in the sand, that story, but I carried you. Yeah. I realized it was me the whole time. And I realized I was the one who had to do this. So then I got into that whole, for a moment, it's me. The power is in me. Esoterically, maybe I'm divine. Maybe there's like this weird position I'm in at a moment where I'm like, maybe I have the spark and I'm this or that, because I hear these ideas. And then it became like, what's the difference between being a deist or pantheist or something like that, where I'm like wrestling with, what is God and is there a God, to there is no God? What's the difference?
Yeah, there's no fundamental difference, and when there's no functional benefit or no function of that God in. So if you believe in deism, where God flicks that first domino of the universe and then it all plays out, then God has no interaction with the universe. So you're like, well, functionally God doesn't exist. So therefore, God doesn't exist.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if deism's true, I mean, I don't know this, but I doubt there's books out there that say you need to believe in that deistic God or else you're going to burn in hell. So the point is, if there is a God, and at this point, I don't believe there's a personal deity, I can't imagine from my experience and everything I've read in the literature about this God and the expectations of what this God would do if he did exist, or else this God has kind of become a deistic God. So now you have, well, Jesus and God were in the world doing things, and they stopped around 2000 and disappeared. So they've rolled the domino effect, and then they disappeared. At this point, that's ridiculous. It's stupid to think that that's the case. So I started to go, let me look into science more. I needed to look into evolution a little bit more. I needed to look into naturalism. I'd never done that. So as I looked into actual science,
I'm wearing my Charles Darwin T-shirt for you. Just monkeys making up monkeys, but yeah.
That's what really blew my mind, was realizing that the natural world had answers this whole time that I never really looked at. It was always superstitious,
and you were never allowed to look at, I suppose. But in what the church often decrees in Bible Belt America, which is, I don't know where you were living at the time, but that idea that you cut Charles Darwin is almost like a swear word.
Yeah, he is. And I used to watch young earth creationist Kent Hovind. I actually used to watch him 10, 12 years ago, believed in what he was saying. I actually believed he was telling the truth, defending God's word, the whole nine. I mean, I literally was a fundamentalist. 7-day creation, the Earth's only 7,000 years old, the whole nine, to finding out science had a much better explanation of things, and it made a lot more sense. So,
was there a moment where you took that final step and said, "Okay, I'm an atheist now"? Can you remember that? Or was it just like it just sort of morphed?
It morphed. I can't remember a day where I said I'm an atheist, but I did make a confession video on my YouTube about like letting everyone know what most people already knew, but I went ahead and like definitively put a video out saying, here's my confession. I'm an atheist now. And I even had people in the chat like, how can you be an atheist? Have you literally uncovered and researched every nook and cranny of every religion or every single like the expectation that they put on why you shouldn't be an atheist is like, first explore every possible potential religious claim there is out there in planet Earth, or don't be an atheist yet till you know that all of them they're all ruled out. I didn't need to.
You can't disbelieve in unicorns unless you've like searched under every rock in the universe and seen that there are no unicorns there. So, yeah, probably not.
Yeah, and for me, man, once I had this experience with Christianity and the Bible and came out, this is what really did it for me. When they talk about, why don't you check all these things? It may not be definitive, absolute proof, but when I saw how Hindus responded and how they believed, and I saw how Muslims, and I saw how Judaism, and I saw how other beliefs and their way of perceiving their worldview was similar to how I had believed in mine, I realized that we're all kind of caught in this trap of believing in these things. And I didn't need to go become a Buddhist or become a Hindu or literally examine everything there is about their truth claims in order to kind of figure out this is all human. Every single last one of these are man-made religions. Every one of them. I see no reason why I need to go and explore every single book, all the literature, every claim of every supposed miraculous claim. All these things. I started realizing a common trope. And that we humans have kind of literalized ancient myth making in many cases, not always.
Yeah.
But
and
that's it. I then went, okay, hold on. Is God made in the image of man? That's what really got me.
Yeah.
And I realized that yes, biblically, clearly, God is made in the image of man. And then if you look at the gods in other cultures, they might be half human, half animal. Well, why is that? Maybe they go a little further back, like Hinduism. Maybe like the Egyptians. You got half human, half animal. Me and Dan Barker talked about this the other night. He's like, notice that it's always God as a king on a throne. These gods did not exist back when we were hunter-gatherers, when we didn't have civilizations where kings ruled nations or kings ruled people. But you're always falling prostrate before God.
Yeah, it's really obvious. It's really obvious when you say it, but you don't think of it. Yeah. Good.
Why is Jesus the Lamb of God? Dan said. Because what did they commonly sacrifice? Lambs. Yeah. If you were in a place where there were no lambs, it would have been the snake of God, or it would have been the donkey, or the whatever of God. The point is you work with what you have in the natural world.
It's interestingly, like, this is a complete sidebar to what you're saying, but I'm writing a feature article at the moment about UFOs and alien life, and if you did find alien life out there, how would that change your belief if you're a Christian or a Muslim or anything else? And I think it's fascinating. So if there are, say the universe is infinite or like nearly infinite or whatever, there are just gazillions of planets out there. So therefore there is almost certainly life out there. We're just quarantined by distance, right? So we're never going to really find them unless we can travel at the speed of light or wormholes or whatever.
Beyond,
yeah. So, but what this means is that if there are other intelligent life forms out there, they're almost certainly moral. And they lead moral lives or struggle to lead moral lives or whatever, which means that they're probably going to be sinning, which means that Jesus, if there's like a million life-giving planets out there, then there are a million Jesuses. Jesus has not just incarnated, or God has not just incarnated as Jesus here, but as a lizard life form on that world where the intelligent life form happens to be lizards, or whatever. There will be a million incarnations of God in human form, in like alien form, all around the universe. And ultimately, it's just quite interesting that we think that in the same way that we have like exceptionalism in so many ways, like within our world, we also think our world is exceptional, when actually it could be one of like a billion worlds with intelligent life forms, and necessitating a Jesus to be incarnated on that planet as well.
Right. I told myself I was willing to accept that there was life out there, but God still created it, you know? And it was my Jesus died for all of them on this planet, you know? Like,
exactly. Like that's that kind of exceptionalism.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's where I'm at now. And today, I continue to explore the natural world. When claims keep coming at me, our friend Caleb Jackson, for example, keeps talking about modern miracles impact how he thinks that if you can accept their modern ones, then how ridiculous would it be to not accept the potential of someone resurrecting in the past, right? This is his point. So when he brings up claims, we talked about this last night. Me and him and Derek Bennett were in a private chat after the live, just chatting for a second. He talked about this guy who died and was partially embalmed in Nigeria or something. Like, he gave me these examples, and I said, "Look,
this is Craig Keener. Are these from the book Miracles?" It's like, but anyway, carry on. It sounds like
I just told him, and I'm gonna like I love Caleb. Caleb's a good guy. I just think he's easily convinced on whatever confirms his worldview. And here's the thing: I said, bottom line, Caleb, I think people bullshit, bro. Yeah. That's what I said to him. I said, I start with people are lying or misunderstand, and then work from there. I never start with, they think that we're closed-minded. And this is something I want to leave for anybody who watches, who thinks, well, I keep getting that accusation, you're closed-minded. You bet your ass you are, but it's not completely. Here's what I mean. You don't go into every claim that anyone has ever made, teeter-tottering 50-50, flip a coin. I might be convinced of this one. This one might be the truth. This one might be the truth. You never enter it like that. You want to always approach it skeptically. And as the evidence is there, it's not like I hear this claim from him about a guy who's partially embalmed, who died and rose again, all right, after, I don't know, a day and a half, 2 days. I don't go into that going, this might be the day. This might be the day that I finally can go back to Christianity and realize it's true. That's not how it is. It's not that easy. I'm looking at it going, have they ruled out every natural explanation?
So we know it's just inductive reasoning, right? We just probabilities. Like, we know that people lie. We know that people misinterpret. We know that people get things wrong. We know that people make mistakes. Okay, so is it more plausible that any of those things explain the data than a miracle happened? Yes. Right. I mean, it's kind of humane thinking, like Hume's thinking in terms of probabilities, but it's evidently more probable that the data can be explained in naturalistic ways.
I mean, let me just make it personal. We can do that with people like that. But I said, if my wife got pregnant and I haven't seen her in 2 years, okay, I am not convinced an angel of the Lord got her pregnant. Okay. You'd be an idiot. Honestly, I don't give a crap what you believe. I don't give a crap what you think is true about God and Jesus and Mary and all that. If your wife gets pregnant and you have not seen her in 2 years, honestly, you're a fool to think that she got pregnant by a spirit and not by another man, or somehow some sperm had to hit the egg. Okay. And I am absolutely convinced of that. I am an anti-theist in that respect. I am not convinced that those things happen. You'd have to prove they happen as examples somewhere in a probabilistic sense.
But this goes back to what we did in the very first video for the resurrection series that we're doing, which is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and it's just simple. It's that simple. So fair enough. If you think that particular miracle story is true, then you need extraordinarily good evidence, like not just one person making an attestation, or maybe even two people, or this person, or maybe three. You're going to need video evidence. You're going to need independent attestation of that video evidence. I'm sorry, it's just the way it goes. If you are going to make a claim to something that is improbable being true, then you are going to need to back that up with an absolute boatload of quality evidence.
Yeah.
End of discussion.
I reserve mine for anomalies as well. There are anomalies. Things happen that aren't typical. That doesn't make them miraculous. So I need extraordinary evidence in order to go to that position.
Yeah. So look, it's really great. Thanks for this. And I think this is the second part of 3, if you don't mind me being so presumptuous. So I think where we've got to is you now embracing, or at least arriving at, a position of atheism, or that gods don't exist. And then it'll be interesting to see what you did with that from there, like how you then, dealing with your addiction and then dealing with your newfound worldview, how those two married up, and then how your YouTube channel started, and where you think you're at, and how you've built up a worldview given that there are no gods. So I'll be interested, if you don't mind. I think there could be a third one in this. Would you agree?
I'm absolutely down for it, my brother.
Yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, look, thank you so much again, Derek. It's been really, really interesting getting an insight into your life. And, you're no different from other humans in, like, you've had a journey from theism to atheism, right?
Yep.
But it's just interesting for other people who are either just about to go on that journey, they may be teetering to understanding what you've gone through, and also people dealing with addiction, maybe it's interesting for them, and people who've gone through that journey to say, yes, that was the same as me, and all these things. So it's always fascinating to hear people's journeys, and someone who has such a prominent channel as yourself, with such amazing sort of resources on there. I think it's interesting to see how you've arrived at where you've got to. So thanks so much, dude. It's been really good talking to you again.
Thank you, bro. Looking forward to your books and doing more shows with you. For sure.
Anyway, thanks, Derek. Always a pleasure, never a chore. And everyone who's watching this, if you're still with us now, like and subscribe and do all that YouTubey stuff, and buy books and merch and whatever. But stay tuned for the third part of this series. And as ever, question everything, most particularly yourself. Anyway, stay safe.